This wasn't just criticism, this was an all-out takedown of Meghan Markle's role at Invictus. And if Tom Bower is even partially right, then what really happened behind those polished public smiles could be far more unsettling than anyone expected. Tom Bower's explosive book already ripped the lid off Invictus, but what followed wasn't just a revelation, it felt like a chain reaction nobody inside the organization could stop. He said that the event has been hijacked, and now insiders are reportedly demanding that Meghan should be removed completely. That's not a minor complaint. That's a warning signal, a fracture. And if you look closely, the clues were always there, hiding in plain sight, disguised as glamour, applause, and carefully framed camera angles. Just wait until the end and see why Tom Bower believes Meghan should be removed from the games, and why, in his opinion, it is the right decision.
She would have normally been there because Invictus has always been her showcase event. Invictus was Meghan, whether it was in Vancouver or Düsseldorf or The Hague. That is where Meghan was able to star and revive her great image of the smiling Duchess. Now, I think people will say, what on earth is this woman doing here? I think the king right now, his best bet would be to distance himself completely, make it clear to Harry that the Sussexes are not welcome at all in Britain. A pretty narcissist. I think she has been remarkably successful with limited talent. I think now the real story is what I'd call the end game.
Tom Bower is not someone who speculates from a distance. Tom Bower showed up, watched, observed, absorbed everything happening in real time during the Vancouver Invictus Games. And what Tom Bower claims to have witnessed wasn't just surprising, it was deeply revealing. Because according to Tom Bower, something had shifted, something subtle at first, then undeniable. The games had become more about Meghan Markle than about the wounded veterans they were created to honor. Think about that for a second. An event built on resilience, slowly turning into something else entirely. Tom Bower didn't just notice appearances, Tom Bower noticed patterns. Outfits becoming headlines, entrances becoming spectacles, Meghan Markle becoming the focal point even when she wasn't speaking, even when she was simply sitting. And if the cameras follow one person long enough, what happens to everyone else? They disappear, quietly, almost invisibly. And that's exactly what Tom Bower suggests happened to the veteran.
Invictus Games began with a profoundly noble mission to use sport to help recovery for wounded veterans. But lately, the math isn't mathing on their mission and the way that they run their foundation and program.
A growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games. But is it really a charity project at all? Is it just being used as a money-making scheme?
And then came the name that changed everything. Not Invictus Games, not a celebration of courage. According to Tom Bower, it had quietly become the Meghan Games. That label didn't come out of nowhere. It came from repeated moments where attention drifted, where cameras shifted, where the story rewrote itself in real time. Meghan Markle wasn't just attending, Meghan Markle was becoming the story. And once that happens, the original purpose starts fading, slowly but dangerously.
Bower suggests that the 2025 Games in Canada were overshadowed by Meghan Markle's public appearances, referring to the event as the Meghan Games. He cites Canadian executives who allegedly felt Meghan was a distraction and that her presence was more about bling than veteran rehabilitation.
What makes this even more unsettling is the intention behind it, at least, according to Tom Bower. Because in his view, almost every appearance Meghan made carried a pattern, a purpose, a calculated step towards something bigger than the games themselves. Public image, personal branding, visibility, and while that spotlight intensified around Meghan Markle, something else dimmed the voices of the veterans who were supposed to stand at the center.
There are some competitors that feel like Harry and Meghan suck all of the oxygen out of the room and it's not about them.
Now here's where the situation turns even more complicated, because Tom Bower doesn't just point at Meghan Markle. Tom Bower pulls Prince Harry into this shifting dynamic. According to Tom Bower, Prince Harry accepted Meghan's arguments, gradually allowing Meghan to step deeper into the structure of the games. And once that door opened, it didn't close. It widened. Invictus, one of the last major global platforms tied to Prince Harry, suddenly became something else, something shared, something influenced, something reshaped. But behind the scenes, not everyone stayed silent. According to Tom Bower, organizers started noticing, feeling it, questioning it, because when the mission of an event begins to blur, the people responsible for protecting it don't ignore that shift. They react, and that reaction slowly, quietly started building tension behind closed doors.
This is a nightmare on wheels. Now, this is seismic. This is the biggest royal story of the year. This is an unmitigated disaster for Harry. This is a nightmare on wheels. This is catastrophic. And the reason why is because Invictus is all he's got.
And this is where the whispers turn into something louder, because as Meghan's involvement grew, so did the discomfort. Senior Canadian organizers, according to Tom Bauer, were no longer just uneasy, they were actively concerned. Not about appearances, about direction, about purpose, about control. And when discussions reportedly began about the 2027 Invictus Games in Birmingham, something critical surfaced. They no longer wanted Meghan to hold the same level of prominence. One insider's alleged description cut through everything. Bling, not rehabilitation. That's not just criticism.
Talks about, and I know for a fact he was there, so he's experiencing these things firsthand, the staged atmosphere. At a 2025 wheelchair basketball match, Bauer claims only 43 paying spectators attended. He alleges that about 100 people were corralled around Harry and Meghan by organizers specifically for photo opportunities to create the false impression of high engagement.
That's a complete rejection of alignment, a statement that suggests the identity of the games had been pulled in a direction it was never meant to go. And then came the reaction that nobody expected to be this clear: relief. According to Tom Bauer, when the idea of Meghan's absence started circulating, many organizers and even competitors felt something shift instantly. Not outrage, not confusion. Relief, as if something heavy had been lifted, as if the focus might finally return to where it was always supposed to be. But that raises a deeper question. If relief was the response, then how long had the pressure been building? And more importantly, what else has been quietly unfolding behind the scenes that hasn't surfaced yet?
Insiders tell me that the organisers of the Invictus Games were thrilled, were happy when Meghan did not show up. Let me explain. Initially, the whole family was going to be at this celebration of the Games, which are taking place in Birmingham a year from now. However, at the last minute, it became clear Meghan would not be attending because of security concerns.
But the story doesn't slow down there. It actually gets darker, more complicated, and far more uncomfortable the deeper Tom Bauer goes. Because according to Tom Bauer, the unease wasn't just about attention or optics anymore. It was about something far more sensitive: participation itself. Tom Bauer claims that some competitors had even considered withdrawing entirely from the Invictus Games. And that detail doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It explodes into a much bigger question about what the environment had become. These were individuals who had fought through recovery, who had pushed themselves to even reach that stage. And yet Tom Bauer suggests they were standing there feeling overshadowed, sidelined, almost erased by a narrative that kept pulling focus back toward Meghan Markle instead of their own stories. And then the narrative shifts again, this time into something even more controversial. Because Tom Bauer doesn't stop at optics or perception, Tom Bauer pushes into the financial side, and this is where the tone becomes impossible to ignore. Tom Bauer claims Meghan turned Invictus into her own personal brand campaign. And when that claim collides with the reported figures, 63 million Canadian dollars, 543 competitors, it suddenly stops sounding like gossip and starts sounding like scrutiny. Because when that level of funding is involved, questions don't just appear, they demand answers. Tom Bauer says transparency concerns started spreading, quietly at first, then more openly, and according to Tom Bauer, sponsors didn't just notice, they reacted. Some stepped back, some walked away. And the reasoning, as Tom Bauer frames it, was simple but devastating. They wanted accountability, and they didn't want to be tied to growing controversy. Tom Bauer ties this directly to Meghan Markle, suggesting that Meghan Markle's visibility may have cost Invictus real financial support, and once that idea enters the conversation, it starts connecting dots that had previously felt isolated. Because if sponsors are hesitating, if funding gaps are forming, then something deeper is shifting beneath the surface. Tom Bauer points to the numbers that raised even more eyebrows, claiming that direct grants to veterans groups dropped by around 63%, while income, reserves, and executive salaries increased. And suddenly the narrative circles back to the very core of Invictus, those veterans who were supposed to be at the center of everything. But people are a little upset about where the money is going, because right now there's been a 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors, despite the fact that they have more money in their bank than ever from carryover. And in an in Vancouver, they brought in, was around $62 million. Their 50% of that was from the government of Canada and BC, meaning that was taxpayers. And once taxpayer money enters the conversation, the stakes escalate immediately because Tom Bauer suggests that people began asking the kind of questions that don't disappear easily. Where is the money going? Why are the veterans reportedly receiving less? And how did an event built on rehabilitation start facing accusations tied to spending priorities? Tom Bauer even connects this controversy to sponsorship decisions, pointing to Boeing's withdrawal and reduced government support from Australia, while also acknowledging multiple factors, but still framing the controversy as a key pressure point that made sponsors reconsider their involvement. And behind that, Tom Bauer describes professionals quietly stepping away, distancing themselves from a direction they no longer recognized. And just when it seems like the narrative has reached its peak, Tom Bauer circles back to what might be the most controversial conclusion of all. Tom Bauer claims that involving Meghan so heavily in the Invictus Games was a major mistake, arguing that the situation could have been avoided entirely if stricter protocols had been in place from the beginning. Tom Bauer goes further, suggesting that anyone familiar with Meghan Markle's public approach would have expected this outcome, because according to Tom Bauer, Meghan Markle uses every platform to strengthen her image and expand her influence, and Invictus, in that framework, becomes not an exception, but an example. Tom Bauer even ties this pattern to Prince Harry, arguing that marrying Prince Harry gave Meghan Markle access to global attention, and that Meghan Markle has continued to use both Prince Harry and royal connections to elevate her own profile, transforming Invictus into yet another extension of that strategy. But the story doesn't end with Meghan Markle, because the pressure surrounding Prince Harry begins closing in from another direction entirely. According to reports referenced by Tom Bauer, Prince Harry is already dealing with financial strain linked to legal setbacks, and when that combines with sponsorship concerns and funding gaps within Invictus, the situation becomes far more unstable. Tom Bauer highlights reports suggesting only £4 million have been secured, while a gap of approximately £25 million remains. And Prince Harry is reportedly reaching out for support that isn't coming as easily as expected. And then, almost quietly, the narrative introduces one final shift that feels just as revealing as everything before it. Because while Prince Harry faces mounting pressure, Meghan Markle is reportedly keeping distance. According to commentary referenced by Tom Bauer, Meghan Markle has remained largely out of sight during this period, and that absence doesn't feel accidental. It feels strategic, because if visibility builds a brand, then absence protects it when the spotlight turns negative. And suddenly, the pattern comes full circle presence when it benefits, distance when it threatens.